Hello and welcome to another amazing part of What If Garp Changed the Future? Professional Ranter wrote this amazing story. Please support them. Don't forget to like, sub, and leave a comment. Now let's dive in. Garp awoke from his nap as he felt the ship docking. Getting up, he noticed something had happened to the book. A lock had been added. He picked up the note next to it. Hey Garp. Figured it would be a good idea if the book had a lock that only you could open. To open it, you just have to tug on it. It will only unlock to your touch. This way people won't see your strange list of objectives or the pictures we gave you. Cheers. Luffy's wish. Garp smiled at the somewhat messy handwriting before throwing the note away. Leaving his room, he made his way to the deck and saw they had avoided any of the ports. This small section is close to a path that we will guide the slaves onto the ships. The boats will be here shortly. I suggest you find Rayleigh soon. We don't want to delay the plan too much. Kuma spoke up from the beach. Garp jumped down and started walking along the path. Alvia quickly fell into step beside him. So why do you want to meet Rayleigh? I have a favor I want to cash in. Garp didn't share anything more. Alvia raised her eyebrow but shrugged. You ever been here before? Once. It was the same day I learned about the last slave auction house and that it wasn't illegal by order of the world government. Garp remembered that day vividly. He had nearly killed Fleet Admiral Kong for defending such a place. Kong's sense of justice had always irked Garp. It never seemed moral or absolute. It was more like a pleasing justice. He aimed to please his superiors, so he never fought them on anything no matter how wrong it was. He tried to please the public with everything he would do. He was the one who wanted to parade Roger's body around to show the world the Marines still held the advantage over pirates. Garp had stopped that from happening. He was the one who started the hunting of women who could potentially have Roger's child. Garp and Sengoku were the only ones to give them and their unborn children proper funerals. Today, I'm fixing something I've wanted to fix for a long time. Alvia saw how Garp's face grew dark. He was clearly remembering something unpleasant. Why did you continue to work for the Marines after you learned about everything they allowed to happen? About the buster calls in the auction house. They heard the sounds of the town. When I was 2, my parents disappeared. I don't even remember their faces, let alone their names. I lived on Dawn Island for years trying to survive. Garp remembered it like it was yesterday. A Marine saved me. Goa had plenty of corruption, but she was kind. She got me into the academy and I got a home. What happened to her? Walking through the streets looking for any sign of Rayleigh. Garp sighed at the memory. When I was able to return to Goa, she was dead. Shot by her own comrades because she caught them taking bribes and was going to report them. I wanted to try and make the Marines into something like what she got me to see them as. Alvia saw a man who bore a resemblance to the wanted posters she saw years ago. Think we found him. I'm sorry. Garp didn't respond and looked to where Alvia was pointing. The man turned the corner and Garp followed after him, not noticing the 2 people that saw him and Alvia. Following the graying golden-haired man, Garp saw him go into a bar that seemed to be closing for the day, which was weird given that it was the afternoon. Stepping inside while the last patron left, Alvia went to one of the tables near the entrance. You know, I could sense you from a mile away, Garp. Rayleigh turned around with a smile and chuckled. It's good to see you. I see you started getting some gray hairs. Garp let out a laugh and took a seat at the bar. Hey, Shaki. She came out and gave him a cup of whiskey. Hey, Garp, it's good to see you're still kicking. Rayleigh took a seat and took a sip of his own drink. So why'd you come here? We're taking down the auction house here. Going to free all the slaves and get them somewhere safe. Garp downed his whiskey. Shaki moved to give him a refill, but he shook his head. Then why follow after me? I'm retired, Garp. I know. Told Senny that you planned to retire once Roger was done adventuring. So when his execution was held, your bounty was frozen. You're no longer a wanted man. That shocked Rayleigh and Shaki. They'd been living in hiding, believing that he was still wanted by the government. So long as you don't do anything to piss off the Marines, it'll remain that way. I don't know what to say. Sengoku actually accepted that. Senny wanted to create a system for pirates that want to retire. The 5 elders never let him go through with it despite the benefits it would grant us. We managed to convince those old bastards that at least with you it would prove beneficial. Garp shook his head at the memory. We came up with plenty of ideas that never saw the light of day. We wanted to find some way to create a middle ground between pirates and Marines, a way for some sort of peace with the good pirates who weren't monsters despite what the propaganda says. Thank you, Garp, Shaki spoke up. She had lived in fear that one day bounty hunters or Marines would come after her husband, but now she didn't have to. It's nothing. Garp looked Rayleigh in the eye. but I am here to cash in that favor. Rayleigh stood up straight. Garp earned that favor after saving Buggy. He'd fallen into the sea, and because of his devil fruit, he couldn't swim. They had been in the middle of a storm, so they couldn't get back to him. But Garp swam through the turbulent waters and saved him. What do you need? Garp took a napkin. Can I have a pen? Shaki handed it to him and he wrote down a place. Fuchsia Village, Dawn Island, East Blue. Go here. Garp handed the napkin to Rayleigh. My grandchildren and some kids I saved live there. I want you to teach them hockey. Rayleigh looked at the napkin and then at Garp. All right then. We have been wanting to go on our honeymoon. Garp raised his eyebrow only to grin widely once they showed him their rings. So you two finally tied the knot, congratulations. He got up from where he was sitting. I'd recommend leaving soon, Sabaody is about to be crawling with Marines. He waved goodbye to the two and stepped outside with Alvia. You know we were being followed, right? Alvia had taken to observation hockey quite well. While she wasn't close to being a master, yet she had enough of a grasp to be able to tell when someone was following her. Yeah, two of my past students. Hina and Smoker. Who names a kid Smoker? He was accidentally fed a devil fruit as a baby. Garp chuckled at the memory of Smoker telling him the story. How do you accidentally feed a baby a devil fruit? Someone switched out the formula for a juiced devil fruit. His parents were panicking, so they didn't get a chance to pick out the name, so a very uncreative nurse decided upon it. Alvia let out a chuckle. So why did they join the Marines? She was always curious for a good story. Smoker was there the day Roger was executed. Seeing him smile even in death inspired him. He decided that the only pirates he would let pass through Logue Town would be those who could smile in death. Hina, she grew up on a merchant ship. It was attacked by a wandering pirate fleet and she was stranded alone on an island where she got her devil fruit. She joined the Marines to stop pirate fleets. Those two had been some of his brightest students. Alvia, swap out. Kazan walked up. Alvia patted him on the back as she ran off to join up with the others. So what kind of signal are you going to give them to start? Garp adjusted his gloves as they came up on the auction house. He could faintly see a celestial dragon coming from the other side of the street, people bowing to them against their will. Seeing one of the stores nearby, he walked up and inspected some of the ties. What's the status of the house? Packed. Every seat is filled by a noble or celestial dragon. Garp saw a red tie and grabbed it. Putting some belly on the counter, he walked back out and started putting it on. As the celestial dragon drew closer, Garp started walking toward them. And who are you to not bow in my presence? The self-proclaimed god exclaimed. Garp finished putting his tie on and looked down at the man who pointed a gun at him. You sound just like Jalmak before I killed him. Garp promptly kicked the saint into one of the buildings. Walking forward, he watched as they crawled out, their leg broken. Raising his foot up, he smashed the world noble's head in like a watermelon. The gathered people, either the saint's bodyguards or the citizens, looked on in shock. Then they started running. Kazan sighed and quickly threw an icicle at one of the bodyguards, killing them. You could at least give me a heads up on what you're gonna do. Sorry, they're just pissing me off. I'm going to go into the auction house, make sure none of them can escape. Garp walked up to the doors and ripped them off their hinges. The gathered nobles looked at him and then they noticed the screaming people in the background. I'm here to kill each of you worthless nobles. Garp started feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. During the God Valley incident, he had lost control of himself. He was overcome with bloodlust. He didn't fight the feeling. These nobles bought people and abused them, tortured and killed them. He could sense some of the revolutionaries coming in from the back and getting the slaves out. He could see some of the slaves realize their collars were falling off. All of you who were enslaved by these monsters, leave now. They ran to the stage and got the slave on it to the back. Kazan made a thin coating of ice over the door, enough to keep it still. Garp cracked his knuckles and stopped holding back. What could be heard coming from within the house could only be described as pure terror. The nobles screamed for help, but Kazan didn't let anybody get close. A roar of rage could be heard and then a gunshot. The massacre went on for 10 minutes. Then the screams stopped. The blood spattered onto the ice gave an impression of what had happened. Then Garp started to destroy the house. He couldn't do anything to this place as a Marine. Now he would tear it down. Alvia ran up to Kazan. Some blood splattered onto one of her eskrima sticks. We got them out. Where's Garp? Just as she asked that, the auction house came crashing down. In the middle of the rubble stood Garp, covered in blood. Throughout the wreckage, people could see the bodies of the nobles, torn apart by Garp in his blood rage. There he is. Garp panted as he stepped out of the rubble. We're leaving. He walked away and the two followed after him. None of the Marines even thought of going after them. How could they possibly stop such a monster? That day, Garp let out the monster only the remaining members of the Rocks Pirates and the Roger Pirates had seen at God Valley. Garp is a berserker. Kazan and Alvia ran in front of Garp. While no one was chasing them, Garp had told them to run for the ship, and Kazan knew why. Getting to the beach, Garp wasted no time and picked the both of them up and threw them to the ship. They landed on the deck. Kuma, get the ship going now. Kuma hesitated for a moment, surprised by Garp drenched in blood. Kazan got up and looked over the side. Do it now. He just killed several celestial dragons. We're about to have a marine fleet on us. That got Kuma moving. Alvia quickly joined Bogart at the helm and got ready to start running like hell. Kuma jumped onto the ship and it sailed away from Sabaody. Garp jumped into the ocean and swam to the ship, the blood washing off of him. Climbing up the ladder, he got on deck and heaved a deep breath. He flopped onto his back and panted. Get the cannons ready. They won't go after the ships with the slaves yet. We gotta give them time to escape. Kazan stretched his back as he psyched himself up for what was to come. Garp, how many celestial dragons did you kill in there? 7 in the house, add the one I killed outside of it, 8. Tom came up from below deck. What's going on? Tom, we're about to face a marine fleet. I need you to help Alvia and Bogart with the ship. Kuma, defend the deck with Kazan. Did the army bring the supplies we requested? Kuma nodded. Yes, we are fully stocked on ammunition. Garp, what should we expect among this fleet? Garp got to his feet and stumbled a bit. Whenever he came out of a blood rage, he grew tired way too quickly. But he had to fight it off for now. Akainu and Kizaru will be helping lead the fleet. However, with so many of those so-called gods dead, Sengoku will be the one leading the charge. They'll come for us first. Then they'll retrieve the slaves. Garp cracked his neck. We need to either stall that fleet or cripple it. That'll give the ships enough time to escape. Tom moved to the helm while Kuma got ready. Kazan prepared an ice sword when something occurred to him. Kuma, what can you do in combat? Kuma took off his glove and showed his hand. Kazan saw that they looked like an animal's paws. I have the power to repel anything I touch. I also have the choice to protect said thing or let it travel through the air unprotected. Kazan nodded. I can work with that. Garp, what do you think? Garp was looking at Kuma thoughtfully. Is it a devil fruit? Kuma nodded. Okay, that is useful. I have an idea, but you'll have to trust me on this. That worried Kazan. Garp rarely if ever asked the people he worked with to trust him. When he asked that, it usually meant he was about to do something that even he considered insane. And given what Garp considers normal, that was a good reason to be scared. Garp, I can see the fleet. I can see about 20. Alvia reported over the loudspeakers. So about 30 then. Garp stepped up to the platform. Kazan threw him a telescope and he extended it. Looking through it, he could see the approaching ships flying the marine symbol. Looking over each of them, he saw where Akainu was. Looking further, he spotted Kizaru and Sengoku as well. They each were on separate ships. All right then. Get us closer. And be ready to fire the cannons. So what's the plan? Kazan joined him. As they got closer, Garp didn't answer. He picked up a cannonball from the rack and stared ahead. Garp? What is one of the drawbacks to Akainu's devil fruit? Kazan thought for a moment before he realized. He can't use his devil fruit on a ship. He'd risk setting it on fire. Once Garp deemed they were within range, he threw the cannonball. Akainu saw it coming and reflexively turned his body to magma. The ball went straight through him and hit the main mast. But Garp's true intention happened already. From Akainu's body, magma dripped onto the ship's deck and immediately began to burn through the wood. Exactly. Garp threw 3 more cannonballs, clearing out the ships surrounding Akainu's. That's 4 ships down. If they try to save those Marines and Akainu, they'll have to divert some of their ships. As Garp predicted, 5 Marine ships diverted from their path and got to work getting the Marines out of the sea. Once those ships are done, they'll have too many people on board. That'll make things cramped, making it harder for them to maneuver. Although Garp did hope Akainu would drown. Kazan was reminded of just how much experience separated him from Garp. So, what's the next step? Garp turned to Kuma. I need you to launch me at Sengoku's ship. We keep the fleet admiral occupied, we have a better chance. Kuma and Kazan gaped at Garp. Once you launch me, take over throwing cannonballs. Garp, are you sure about this? Kuma had heard some insane plans before. He worked with Dragon after all. He was starting to see where his boss got it from. Course I'm sure. Garp stared ahead. With Akainu at the least temporarily incapacitated, they could focus on Kizaru and Sengoku. I'm the one who killed the celestial dragons. I get off the ship and onto one of theirs. They'll focus on that ship. Meanwhile, you guys can deal with the fleet. This marine protocol was one Garp had studied relentlessly. Sengoku had wanted to get it changed, so he got Garp and Tsuru's help in trying to find a way to do so. Unfortunately, they couldn't find one. The protocol was going to doom the marine fleet because the moment Garp was off this boat, he knew they would have to focus on him and not the ship. As they got within range, Garp took a deep breath. Kuma, launch me. With his one-gloved hand, Kuma picked up Garp. Checking where he was aiming, he threw his captain into the air and then with his non-gloved hand launched him at Sengoku's ship in a bubble. Garp flew through the air and hit the deck of the marine ship. The Marines looked in shock as he got off the deck. Garp? What the hell? Sengoku looked at his friend in shock. Hey, Senny. Garp smiled cheekily. Sorry for crashing in. He could hear the granting wish fire its cannons. Before we get started, I gotta ask a quick question. Were you the one who got my crew called the Starry Crew? Sengoku grit his teeth. Don't just stand around, get him. The Marines surrounding Garp jumped into action. They fired their guns, but Garp quickly rolled into the crowd. Punching some of them away, he looked at Sengoku. We both know how this'll end. Retreat now or deal with the fallout. We're already dealing with the fallout. Because of you, we had to call multiple ships away from their duties. Sengoku didn't step down. He wanted to. He wanted to send these ships back to what they were supposed to be doing. But he had no choice in the matter. Garp sighed. He stepped up to the main mast as the Marine soldiers stood around him, trying to see an opening. But their fear of him was too great. Garp's reputation wouldn't be lost just because he quit the Marines, and with all he's done since then, it has only grown. Garp gripped the main mast and lifted. It tore from the ship and he threw it at one of the neighboring ships. Due to the size of the main mast for the ship, it actually hit 2 ships. Well, now you can just say the main mast was compromised. Garp then sensed something with his observation hockey and quickly activated armament. A beam of light hit his forearm. If he had been slower, he would have lost his arm. Ooh, impressive, Garp. Kizaru. Hovering above the ship was Kizaru. Garp never liked him. He never seemed to take anything seriously and relied way too much on his devil fruit. Garp could hear his ship continue to handle the fleet. Alvia steered the ship as best she could. The difference here was that the Marines actually knew what they were doing. Bogart, I need some cannon fire in the rear. On it. Bogart fired the cannons at the rear of the ship, hitting the ship behind them. However, from their left came 2 more ships. Tom? I need something better than regular cannonballs. Tom moved Bogart to the side and pressed a button. He then fired the cannons and far smaller cannonballs came out. In fact, there were more of them than there were cannons. Grape shot. Useful when dealing with multiple ships. Tom, would it kill you to label this shit? Alvia turned the ship around to avoid crashing into a sinking ship. Garp looked around him. He could see one of the ships that had gone to where Akainu was sinking was coming here. So Akainu is on his way. Good, I won't have to improvise too much then. So, how bad do you think the publicity is going to be with this? I mean, you guys are dealing with multiple pirate fleets and have to defend kingdoms and trade routes. Then all of a sudden multiple ships are called away, and for what? Because someone decided to stop a slave auction house and killed the people buying said slaves. The Marine soldiers around him started to murmur. Barely anyone in this fleet could have known about the auction house. Sengoku couldn't deny its existence. It was the only building actually attacked by Garp. Attack him. Sengoku wanted to get this over with and deal with the fallout. But the soldiers didn't move. If it was out of fear or because they just learned they were attacking a man who freed slaves while killing the slavers, it didn't matter, they didn't move. That was when the ship got next to it and Akainu jumped aboard. Steam was rising from him and he was clearly angry. Garp, you will answer for your crimes. Garp wanted to kill Akainu and Kizaru right here and now. But he was fighting off the fatigue from the blood rage and couldn't hold it back much longer. Another day, Akainu, another day. Garp grabbed a sword from one of the Marines and threw it at Akainu. Once again, Akainu reflexively turned his body to magma. It fell to the deck and quickly set the ship on fire. You might want to get better reflexes. Or a ship that doesn't catch on fire. Garp let out a laugh and jumped overboard. The granting wish had handled the fleet, although it did take some damage. Garp swam to it, trying to fight the fatigue. Grabbing onto the ladder, he forced his body to climb. Pulling himself onto the deck, he panted. Okay, that definitely bought the ships enough time to escape. Kazan walked forward, only to see Garp fall unconscious. Garp. Running to him, Kazan kneeled at his side. Alvia, punch it to the Rendezvous, we need a medic. Garp stood in an endless abyss of black. Looking around, he could see nothing. A circle of light illuminated him. He heard a light turn on and turned around. His breath hitched. A woman with purple hair and orange eyes stared at her. She wore a Marine captain uniform. Captain Hallow? She was the Marine who got him out of Goa and to the Marine Academy. She was the entire reason he was alive. What do you think you are doing? Her voice oozed disgust. I saved you, gave you a home in the Marines, set you on the path to becoming something amazing, and this is how you repay me? She stalked forward and slapped him. I should have never helped you. The words she spoke were in direct contrast to Garp's memories of her. Another light turned on. Turning, Garp saw Sengoku. Why, Garp? Why would you do this? We swore we would change the Marines together. Why did you abandon me? Garp wanted to say something, anything, but his voice was gone. We swore to be each other's brothers, to help each other in our time of need. Do you not trust me to help you? Garp stumbled away from the two. He wanted to explain, to tell them why, but he couldn't talk. Every time he tried, nothing would come out. Another light turned on. Tsuru stood under it. Garp, I was there when you lost Yumi. I comforted you, I helped you. I told you I would be there whenever you needed me. What? Why would you abandon us? Another light, and under it stood Hina. Hina looked up to you. You avenged Hina's family. Taught Hina everything she knows. Why abandon everything you know? Smoker stood under the next light. You taught me to lead. You taught me how to judge a person's character. Why abandon your men? Why abandon everything you stood for? Why did he leave the Marines? Why did he spit on Captain Hallow's memory? On his and Sengoku's oath of brotherhood? Why did he abandon Tsuru's friendship? Why did he leave everything he knew? He left his men. He abandoned his post as a leader. He spit on everything he stood for. What? More lights turned on, and every Marine he ever trained was there. They kept asking him why. He couldn't answer them. He kept trying to speak, but he couldn't. He wanted to say he was sorry. That he didn't mean to hurt so many people. Ace. A voice behind him yelled. Garp whirled around and his blood stopped. An older Ace was in front of an older Luffy. Akainu's magma fist was straight through his chest. No. He finally found his voice and ran forward, only for Sengoku to tackle him to the ground. Let me go. He's my grandson. No, he's not. Akainu looked at him. He is the demon spawn of Gold Roger. He needs to be put down. Suddenly Garp was standing and was holding a spear. The tip was pointed straight at Ace. Akainu spoke into his ear. Do your duty as a Marine. Kill this demon spawn. Suddenly Ace was a child. Garp looked at the young child, the child he watched grow up. The child he swore to protect upon the dying words of one of his friends. His grandson. No. Garp threw down the spear. It fell into the floor. He knelt down and brought Ace into a hug. Blood will never dictate a person's course in life. And it certainly doesn't decide family. Ace looked up at him, tears streaming down his face. Ace is my grandson, and nothing will ever change that. Garp was standing again. Everything around him melted into the floor. Sabo. Garp turned at Luffy's scream of pain. Sabo was pierced by one of Kizaru's rays. The scar over one of his eyes wasn't there when Garp saw him last. He was older, yet he still had that gap-toothed grin. Sabo. Garp tried running to him, but chains held him back. Akainu stood in front of him. You swore an oath to serve the Marines. If you can't even stand back as criminal scum are dealt with, then you may watch what happens to those who oppose true justice. The scene shifted. Luffy was chained to a post, and in front of him were 9 people. Behind him were even more people chained up. A man with a scar over his eye was the first to be killed. Zoro. Then a woman with fiery orange hair. Nami. The kid from Syrup Village was next. Usopp. A blonde-haired man in a suit. Sanji. One after the other they were executed. Chopper. Robin. Frankie. Brook. Jinbe. Tears streamed down Luffy's face and he tried to reach them. But he couldn't. Akainu stood in front of Luffy. You will suffer, Pirate King. For the crimes you committed against the world government. Luffy was forced around the pillar he was chained to and forced to watch everyone else chained up be killed. He screamed their names, tried with all his might to escape. But he couldn't do anything. When a light blue-haired lady smiled at him before she was killed, did Garp finally realize. These people, they were Luffy's crew. The crowd was his friends and allies. Luffy. Garp wanted to reach out to him, wanted to hold his grandson. But the chains wouldn't let him. The scene shifted and Luffy was chained up in a cell. Dried tears upon his face, and he looked like he hadn't seen anything of the outside world in days. Akainu walked in with some inmates from Impel Down. Well, Pirate King, Seems some of the kingdoms aren't okay with you dying with your innocence intact. Garp's blood froze. Akainu stepped out of the cell, leaving the inmates to grin lecherously. Luffy didn't move a muscle. The scene changed and Luffy was in another cell. He wasn't chained up, but he wasn't trying to escape. He looked outside through the bars in his window and saw a shooting star. I wish things could be different. The scene changed one final time. They were back at Marineford. Luffy was being walked towards the execution platform. No. Get away from him. You have no right. Garp struggled against the chains, but he could only watch as Luffy soullessly walked onto the platform and kneeled. There was no grand speech, no spectacle. The executioners simply impaled Garp's grandson. And Akainu laughed. Garp finally broke through the chains. Luffy! He rushed towards his grandson. Everything disappeared as he cradled Luffy's corpse, Akainu's laughter echoing around him. Garp could feel rain as Luffy shrunk in his arms. A baby swaddle came into existence and covered his grandson. Looking up, Garp saw a familiar storm. Looking around, he saw an island he knew all too well. His name is Luffy. Garp turned and saw dragon. What's it short for? Garp couldn't help but say, remembering this day fondly. Lucifer. Garp looked down at his baby grandson, who smiled wide and let out a joyous laugh. The sun pierced through the storm and shined upon his grandson. Garp remembered why he left the Marines and everything else. Why he set out on this path. I promise, Luffy, I will protect your smile. I will abandon everything I know, tear up this entire world, destroy the Marines, all to protect you. Garp laid a kiss on his baby grandson's head and smiled. Garp awoke with a start. He was in a tent on a medical cot. The nurse looked at him surprised, and Garp saw that there were other people. He then realized he had broken restraints on him as well. Garp, Kazan spoke up from where he was sitting, sporting a bruised cheek. What the fuck were you dreaming about? Sengoku stared at the ruins of the auction house. They had tried to chase after Garp, but with all the ships that they lost and the damage to the remaining ones, they had wasted hours. Now Sengoku stood on Sabaody, staring at the ruins of a place he had worked tirelessly to shut down yet never could. How many dead? He asked one of the Marines. We can confirm 8 celestial dragons were killed. That would be an 8 billion increase to Garp's bounty. We're still searching through the rubble for the rest of the bodies. Sengoku sighed. He hadn't seen a sight like this in years, decades ever. Before Garp earned the title Hero of the Marines, he was known by something the public has forgotten. He had been on his way to earning the title before the God Valley incident, so former Fleet Admiral Kong had decided to change his epithet to the Fist. Garp hated it. The sight before him, Sengoku had seen plenty of times while working alongside Garp through the years. So, Ares has come back. Ares was the name of a man from an old Odyssey. It stated that he waged war constantly. The people of his time called him the god of war. He was fearsome, yet he wasn't stupid. Sure, he could rush headlong into things, but he used knowledge from past experiences and the wisdom he gained from mistakes to better himself and his strategies. He sailed the seas and fought many foes. The territories he possessed were great and stretched across the 4 blues and the Grand Line. Garp had embodied him to the letter. Some who knew the story well enough called him the reincarnation of Ares. Garp had been a one-man army back in the day. He still was. Despite what he would say, age hasn't slowed him down, it only gave him wisdom and knowledge. He waged war on pirates and the criminals of the kingdoms. He hunted corrupt Marines like they were dogs. All features of Ares. God damn it, Garp. Seeing him after everything, Sengoku couldn't truly be mad at him. The Marines had far too many problems and he couldn't fix any of them because of the 5 elders and celestial dragons. He and Garp had tried to fix what they could, but there was so much. It seemed Garp had finally grown tired of trying to fix things from the inside. Now he was fixing things on his terms. Sengoku just wished Garp had taken him along. He was tired of trying to fix things from the inside. With Garp, uninhabited island. Garp sat on his cot as a nurse checked his vitals. He had been out for hours and apparently at some point started thrashing about. They had tried to restrain him, but he broke them. Kazan tried to help, but he ended up getting punched with an armament fist. He hadn't gotten close to falling out of the cot, so the most they could do was move everything away from him and give the cot a wide berth. Sorry again for punching you. Kazan flipped him off. You used fucking hockey. That shit hurt. I can't even use ice to numb the pain. A side effect of Kazan's devil fruit that he was really hating right now. What the hell was happening in that head of yours? For that matter, what the fuck happened in the auction house? I've never seen you act like that before. It was a nightmare, nothing more. As for the auction house, Garp chuckled. Senny called it a blood rage. Called me a berserker a couple times. I can't always control it and afterwards I'll fall asleep. You're telling me that you can go into a rage so powerful that you can't control it? Kazan sounded scared. I don't attack my allies while in it. The nurse finished the checkup on Garp and left to see to other patients. How many did we get out? Once the nobles were identified, the army raided their ships and freed the slaves. Some of them were pretty beat up, all of them had been starved. Kazan sighed. He's been supplying them with ice to use. Seeing the injuries was eye-opening. The house had full stock of slaves. In total, 300. Garp sighed. That's good to hear. I'm glad they're safe. How are the others? Kuma is in a meeting with the army leaders. Tom and Alvia are repairing the boat. Bogard went to go find a place to sleep. Kazan breathed. He had been pushing himself a lot recently, and this was the first actual break he'd had in a while. Alvia and Bogard apparently dealt with some guards that tried to stop them. Tom made sure everyone got on the ships. Kuma worked in communications. This was a big victory for the army. They'd apparently been trying to get the house shut down for a while, and thanks to you it was. Garp nodded. Good. Seems Alvia's training is coming along nicely. Yeah. Kazan looked to the side. Garp, did I do the right thing leaving the Marines? What do you mean? I mean, couldn't I have been able to do more good within since I held the rank of Admiral and all that? Garp let out a deep sigh. Senny's been trying to change things. Tsuru and I helped him in his efforts. None of the changes we tried to make ever went through because of the 5 elders. Maybe you could have done better than us. Maybe things could have changed if we tried hard. But I've had a chance to look at things with a clearer head. Garp looked at Kazan. The Marines were founded on the idea of absolute justice. The justice you and I and Senny and others follow were the outliers. So long as the foundations of the Marines stay built on absolute justice, it can never truly be fixed. Garp cursed his naivety. He had been so focused on trying to fix things he never stepped back and looked at the big picture. It took the wish showing up for that to happen. I can't tell you that you made the right or wrong choice though. That's up to you. Garp got off the cot and left to find something to help with. Kazan was left to think about what he said. Garp looked over the island they were on. It had been chosen due to its size and the fact that it was uninhabited. Tents were erected for everyone as they waited for more proper transportation. The ships that had been used to get them away from Sabaody weren't built for long journeys. Garp sighed as he watched the former slaves mingle about, some reuniting with family and friends they thought lost while others mourned those who died. A large feast was laid out, with plenty of cooks and food to feed them for days, even with Garp's appetite. Wish you could see this, Senny. That era of the slave trade is finally over. The last monument to it has been torn down, and now you can truly work on eradicating it. The house had been the one place where someone could legally buy and sell slaves, all because the celestial dragons liked it. With it gone, Sengoku could work on taking down the illegal slave traders without worrying they would go to the house. A tent had been erected where a revolutionary was offering to tattoo their slave marks into something else. They couldn't get rid of the brands, but they could change them into something else at least. A long line stretched out of it, and many of the slaves were showing off and admiring their tattoos. Some of them were crying in joy, seeing the mark that had hurt them so changed into something that brought them joy. For some reason a lot of them had it changed to a shooting star. Garp really didn't know why. Gotta say, I'm impressed. Garp turned around and was met with a man with a belly and muscled arms the former Marine recognized as the build of a strong man, although the man before reminded him of a mountain. Garp also noticed that time had seemingly stopped if the leaves frozen in the air were anything to go by. I mean, you freed all of them and killed plenty of world nobles and celestial dragons who partook in the practice. The man ruffled his hair, and Garp realized his hair was made of rock. The man's skin was stone and dirt with moss and the roots of plants growing from his body. His clothes were made from flowers and leaves. His left eye was a ruby while his right was an emerald. You're a god, Garp stated the obvious. Yup, call me Earth. It's nice to meet you. Earth brought his hand out and Garp shook it. Don't worry, time's been stopped while we talk. I noticed. Earth wore very simplistic clothes. The extravagance of them came from the material that made them. Although they looked like a basic vest and pants. Death is having a party with all those celestial dragons you killed. I mean, 8 of them in one go. Earth laughed. It sounded like an earthquake as his belly shook. You definitely deserve the title of Ares. Garp remembered when he first got that title. He hadn't known where it came from, so he went through the library only to end up laughing with Sengoku about it. I guess. Look, I just wanted to get a chance to meet you. I wouldn't be able to normally since you're out on the sea and I can only appear on land. I just wanted to give you some information about where you could find the Yami Yami no Mi. I still don't understand why I have to find that thing. Earth scratched the back of his head and chuckled. He patted his belly as some seats came out of the ground for him to sit on. Garp took the other. You saw the reason for Marshall D. Teach, right? Earth spoke the name with disgust. He's a catalyst for things, right? Yes. In the old timeline, he turned Ace into the Marines to get a warlord position which had opened up due to Luffy defeating Crocodile. Garp choked on his spit at that mention. Crocodile? That meant Luffy had faced him in Alabasta since the warlord set up shop there. Crocodile had the advantage there. And apparently Luffy still defeated him. Teach had left the Whitebeard pirates after killing his commander Thatch. He killed Thatch because his commander had found the Yami Yami no Mi, the fruit that Teach joined the Whitebeard pirates to find. Marshall D. Teach is now on Garp's shit list. He hates traitors. It's because of the Yami Yami no Mi he was able to become a catalyst so easily for many events. He still can without it, but removing it would be more beneficial. Where can I find it? Garp wanted to remove it as soon as possible. If that fruit was the reason Ace died, then it couldn't fall into enemy hands. It's in the New World, on one of the islands not claimed by any of the emperors. I'd recommend finishing things up in Paradise first before going there. Even with all the quakes you've caused to events, Teach won't find it for years. Ocean is ensuring that. Quakes. Earth jumped a bit realizing what he said. Well, we each call it something different. See, when you change something in the timeline, it causes what I call quakes in planned events. For instance, destroying the auction house. That house stood for a long time before Luffy destroyed it. However, because you've destroyed and removed the only place where someone could legally sell people, that's caused a quake in events that shifts where people will be. Then we throw in you killing 8 celestial dragons. Sabaody was originally a playground for them. Even without the house, they could take anyone they liked as a slave, and many people there would be enslaved. But since you killed 8 of them there, they are now too afraid to go back there. So many people who originally would have been enslaved now won't be. Everything you're doing now causes quakes in events of the timeline that alters everything. The people you interact with, the people you save, the people you kill, each of them causes some sort of quake. Earth took a breath. But something a bit more interesting would have to relate to Kuina and Usopp. That got Garp's attention. Kuina originally died from that fall. Luffy's right hand Zoro would be forever changed by it. However, now that she lives, she will instead join Luffy's crew with Zoro. Usopp, you gave him the idea to use more than just a slingshot. In the future he will master pistols and rifles, the bow and arrow, slingshots, and become known as the world's greatest marksman. But the most interesting bit would have to be Makino's new children. Garp smiled slightly, happy those kids had someone they could call mom again. Each of them will join one of the 4 boys on their journeys. Reiju in this new timeline will become Luffy's right hand, while Zoro this time will be his left hand. Ichiji will join Ace, Niji will join Sabo, and Yanji will join Law. They each go on a journey that they never would have in the original timeline. The quakes you've caused in their lives are amazing, the way the world will be changed. It's so exciting. Earth looked like an excited puppy. Garp stared at Earth, trying to comprehend what he just said. He was just doing what he could to protect Luffy's smile, and yet he had affected so many lives. It was weird. Does that mean that with everything I've changed now, Luffy would be safe in the future? He knew he hadn't done all the tasks and he was still going to do them, but he had to know. Not yet. While you have changed plenty, Luffy is still on a path that will end with him losing his smile. Earth spoke somberly. Garp cursed. All right. It was nice meeting you. He got up and brought his hand out. Earth surprised him, however, by bringing him in for a hug. It was a pleasure meeting you. Earth melded back into the ground and time resumed. Garp started to make his way down from where he had been overlooking the camp. As Garp entered the camp, many of the people looked at him in awe. He didn't know why though. For them he was their savior. He killed their tormentors, destroyed the auction house, and gave them a new chance at life. Garp didn't know any of that. He was just trying to help. Sir Garp? A young one, a child, stepped forward and offered Garp an apple. Garp looked at this young boy who was offering him food and smiled. You need that more than me, kid. You need your strength. Garp will never take food from someone who had starved. He kneeled down and patted the kid on the head. I know what it's like to go hungry. I won't take food from someone who has suffered that pain. Garp got up and went on his way, not knowing how his words moved those people. The child happily bit into the apple. Stepping into the tent where the tattoos were being made, Garp saw a man with some piercings and tattoos. Although the strangest part was his eyes. They were black and red with no whites to them. Looking up, the man greeted him. Hello, I'm Yomo. Do you need something? Garp shook his hand. It seemed Yomo was on break right now. Sorry if I'm intruding. I just need a small tattoo real quick. Yomo guided him to the chair. If it's not too complex, it shouldn't be a problem. What do you want? Garp stood in front of the chair and took off his vest, shirt, and tie. He sat down and pointed above his heart. I'd like a tattoo of the letters SL right here. Yomo got to work. He and some people who peeked into the tent saw how many scars Garp had. It told the story of how many battles he survived. So why those letters? Garp looked at Yomo and chuckled. They're the first letters to my grandson's names. It's so I always can feel them with me. Yomo smiled at the sentimentality. What's with your tattoos? They're in remembrance of an old friend. Yomo finished up on the final letter and went to go sterilize the needle. Do you need anything else? Garp let out a laugh. I might get your services another time. Right now this is all I need. He got up and turned around. It revealed the many scars on his back as he put his shirt and vest back on. He put his tie on and then fished his gloves out of his pocket. He walked out of the tent as he put them on and headed for the granting wish. Hey Garp, Alvia spoke from a table where she was drawing something. How you feeling? Good. What are you doing? Alvia pointed at the encampment. Some of them are musicians and asked if they could see the instruments that we have. They liked a lot of the designs and asked how to build them. Tom took literally all of Germa's blueprints, even the ones for the instruments, so I'm currently making copies. Germa ain't going to be using them. She chuckled a bit. Why would Germa have blueprints for instruments? From what Tom told me, for espionage missions. The mercenaries would know the instrument inside and out so they could be used to hide things. Hence, blueprints. So what do you need? Alvia looked away from her work and at Garp. I was thinking about doing something special for them. Is Bogard here? Right? Bogard yawned as he came on deck. He'd just woken up. Right here. What do you need? Garp smirked. Remember that song Seni, Tsuru, and I sang at that party? Bogard thought for a moment before his eyes widened. Oh yeah. We'll need a third person though. I'm certain Kazan would be willing to help you guys, Alvia said, smirking slightly. A few hours later the three men were around a small campfire near the ship. Kazan had been roped in after some quick convincing. Alvia told him she would take a shift of his so he could take a nap. Garp had a drum while the others had guitars. Garp began to bang on the drum. There once was a ship that put to sea, Bogard started singing. The name of that ship was the Billy O.T. Some of the people started to gather around. The winds blew hard, her bow dipped down. It was one of the many shanties pirates sang. Oh blow my bully boys blow. Ha. They started to sing together. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. The crowd was starting to get bigger. Bogard took over. She'd not been 2 weeks from shore when down on her a right whale bore. The captain called all hands and swore he'd take that whale in tow. People started to dance to the shanty, some even recognizing it from the West Blue. Ha. The trio started to sing together again. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Garp wanted these people to party. They had their freedom back and that was a reason to celebrate. Some in the crowd joined in when they recognized the parts. What will we do with a drunken sailor? What will we do with a drunken sailor? What will we do with a drunken sailor? Early in the morning, Garp took over. Smiling he continued with the others chiming in. Put him in the brig until he sobers, put him in the brig until he sobers, put him in the brig until he sobers. Early in the morning. One rule that Garp had, music was one of the best medicines. He could already see some in the crowd dancing. Way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises. Early in the morning. Bogard went back in. Oh, the wind was foul and the sea ran high. The others chimed in for the next one. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. This and the last part of the song originated from the Grand Line. She shipped it green and none went by, and it's time for us to leave her. Many of the musicians saw what was happening and grew excited. They rushed to the granting wish to get instruments. Leave her, Johnny, leave her, oh leave her, Johnny, leave her, for the voyage is long and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Garp went back into the fray with some accompanying him. Them Cape Cod ships ain't got no sails, haul away, they'd all blown off in the northeast gales and were bound away for Australia. Garp smiled as he made his voice rougher. So heave her up me bully boys, haul away, heave her up and don't you make a noise and we're bound away for Australia. Kazan took the lead using his devil fruit to make his voice echo. Hey! Sanchiana gained a day away Sanchiana. Now! Polion of the West, they say along the plains of Mexico. Mexico and Australia were famous islands in the South Blue. Well, heave her up and away we'll go, away Sanchiana, heave her up and away we'll go, along the plains of Mexico. Bogart took over. She's a fast clipper ship and a bully good crew, away Sanchiana, and an old salty yank for a captain too, along the plains of Mexico. The entire crowd chimed in as the three continued. Well, heave her up and away we'll go, away Sanchiana, heave her up and away we'll go, along the plains of Mexico. Kuzan and Bogart sang together. Sanchiana fought for gold, away Sanchiana, around Cape Horn through the ice and snow, along the plains of Mexico. Kuzan smiled wide. Well, heave her up and away we'll go, away Sanchiana, heave her up and away we'll go, along the plains of Mexico. Some could tell the song was coming to an end. So leave her Johnny, off we'll go, the drunken sailor, Wellerman whaler, bound away for Mexico. With the song over, Garp stood up and smiled wide. Today is a day of celebration. The house is destroyed, all slavers within are dead, and you are free. The crowd cheered as the trio stepped away and the musicians jumped in excitedly. Didn't know you could sing, Alvia said as she took a sip of her drink. Garp laughed. On the seas you don't need to sing good, you just gotta have some fun while doing it. Let's give it up for our saviors. The one who had been chosen as the lead singer pointed at the starry crew and everyone cheered. Now, we spent some time coming up with a song that we think perfectly encapsulates their captain. We call it The One Who Knocks. So let's get started. As they started playing, Garp smiled and went to the back of the crowd and fished out a den mushy. Calling it up, it rang for a moment. Hey Garp, the kids are with Makino. Dayton spoke before hanging up. Garp chuckled before dialing for Makino. Hi Garp. Are you at a party? Gramps. Three voices spoke up and Garp could hear clambering as they tried to get closer to the snail. Gramps, how's it going? What did you do? A spoke first. Did you kick any noble ass? Sabo grew excited. How big is your bounty gonna get? I need to know so I can beat it. Luffy. Garp laughed as he listened to his grandsons fire off question after question. Wah! I got some fun stories for you kids. Garp looked at the ships sailing away. 4 days they partied and healed, singing to their heart's content and feasting. Finally, the Revolutionary Army came with ships meant for longer journeys and Garp said goodbye. It had been nice to be able to finally relax. But now it was back to business. Once he could no longer see the ships, Garp made his way to the remaining tents where his crew was. Tom wasn't there, though that wasn't a surprise. Kuma apparently had a request for a room and the army delivered the supplies when they arrived. I'm thinking we should head to the New World soon. Garp took a seat with them. Alright, Tom got the code on the ship back at Germa, so it should be good, Alvia said as she lay in the sand. Thing is, I'm thinking we leave after one last hit to their balance. Kazan looked up from where he was napping. What are you planning? Kuma and Bogart looked at him as well. Garp took a deep breath. He was about to suggest something they may not agree with. I'm thinking we make a new emperor. The reaction was instant. They all looked at him with their mouths open in shock. Are you crazy? Then they realized who they were yelling at. Hear me out. Garp held up his hands in surrender. So far all 4 emperors have only ever resided within New World, and so do all their territories with the exception of Fishman Island. Paradise has always been under the complete rule of the world government, but if we change that, the balance that was split by the red line would be near completely shattered. Our mission is to break that balance, so making a new emperor seems like a good way to do that. Kazan pointed one of his fingers at Garp and was going to say something, then he thought about it for a moment. Then he went back to sleep. I'm not dealing with another one of his crazy plans so soon after the last one. Wake me up when we leave. Alvia looked at Garp for a moment. Would this potentially lead to Cypher Pole getting fucked over? Most likely. They can rarely if ever fully operate a new world due to the emperors, so making one for Paradise would fuck them over. Alvia thought it over for a moment then shrugged. Alright, I'm in. Kuma was currently remembering the various insane plans Dragon came up with and regretting everything that led to him joining Garp. Why did you have to give Dragon your planning skills? Why? He silently wept. Sir, I feel I should say this, but who would we make a new emperor? Most pirates in Paradise aren't that strong and they are all being hunted right now. The crisis has all Marines in Paradise on high alert. So who could we choose from? The warlords. Bogart resisted the urge to facepalm. Of course. Any idea which of the 6 we go with? Doflamingo, from what our intelligence says, resides within Dressrosa in New World, so he wouldn't work. Kuma shared what he knew. Wasn't even going to consider him. Gecko Moria is out too. Alvia raised her brow. Why? From what the news says, he's pretty strong. Don't get it wrong, he is strong. Kazan realized that if he wanted to live he needed to know what they were doing. Back in the day before he got the position he was pretty fierce. But then he went up against the beast pirates and became pathetic. Garp deadpanned. I was gonna say cowardly, but yeah, pathetic works. He rarely if ever leaves his ship, and he made his ship into an island so he could live there. The only reason he still has that warlord position is because of his devil fruit and the army of zombies. Yes, he can make zombies, that he has. If not for those two things, he wouldn't have even been considered for the position. He's still strong, but he's just grown cowardly and lazy since his golden days. Alvia nodded. Okay, so he's out then. So is Jinbi. That piqued Kuma's curiosity. What? Fishman Island would easily agree to become his territory, and he is a formidable fighter. He joined the warlords to better relations between humans and fishmen. While it has been slow and small, he has made progress in bettering them in that position. Him suddenly becoming an emperor wouldn't work out in the long run. Kuma nodded. That makes sense. That just leaves Sir Crocodile, Dracula Mihawk, and Boa Hancock. Garp stared at the setting sun. Crocodile is out. He secretly runs the organization Baroque Works, which unites all sorts of criminals under the flag of bounty hunting. Never said anything when I learned about it because I'd been trying to get some sort of guild for the bounty hunters for years, but the government kept blocking me at every turn. He also refuses to leave Alabasta, most likely because it gives him the advantage with his devil fruit, and it ensures that he doesn't have to worry about getting wet, which is the weakness of his fruit. The others sighed. The fact that Garp had put any thought into this at all showed how seriously he was considering it. Mihawk wouldn't work out either. He simply sails the seas looking for a challenge. He could lead, but he'd need someone to temper him to be an effective leader. So that just leaves Hancock. Would she work out for this? Kazan questioned it. From the few times he'd interacted with the woman, he never got the right impression of her. Yes, for two reasons. She only accepted the warlord position because she wanted to keep her home island of Amazon Lily safe. She's also a former slave. That got the attention of the others. Garp, Sengoku, and Tsuru had worked hard to ensure the public wouldn't know that Hancock was a former slave when she took the seat among the 7 warlords. They had told everyone it was to keep the public image of them positive, when in actuality they didn't want her to have to relive those memories anytime she was in the paper. She and her 2 sisters were enslaved by a celestial dragon. They were freed from Mary Geos when Fisher Tiger attacked it, and freed as many slaves as he could. If we offer her a way to no longer have to answer to the world government, she would most likely take it. Especially if it benefited her people. His crew looked at him. Garp had clearly come up with how to broach the topic of making a new emperor and had done his research on the candidates. Choosing from the warlords made sense. They were strong, and by having a warlord become an emperor, the balance would be disturbed even more than if they had just made a new emperor. Kazan looked Garp in the eye. Alright, we'll make Hancock an emperor. Then we'll head to New World. Also, I want to kill another celestial dragon so I can say I've killed 10 of them. They all facepalmed. Of course, Garp wanted to do that. Why wouldn't he? He may be smart, but he's also an idiot. Tom sighed as he looked out at the sea. He had unfortunately missed the meeting due to setting up a communications room at the request of Kuma. Learning they were going to kill a 10th celestial dragon and then create a new emperor on top of that sounded like madness to any sane person. Of course, Garp is very clearly insane. He'd have to be to do half the things he's done in his life. Why are we charting a course for Alabasta? Wouldn't it make more sense to just go to Amazon Lily? Garp sighed from where he was sitting at the prow. He was bored but also nervous. By killing 10 celestial dragons, his bounty would forever have a baseline of 10 billion. There was the risk of many bounty hunters, but also foolish marines and pirates hoping to get a massive boon to their reputations. There were dangers with just disrespecting a celestial dragon. Killing one was considered by many to be a death sentence. Amazon Lily's entire population is female. What's more, most of them have never seen a man in their life and they hate them. Going there uninvited is asking for trouble. The reason we're going to Alabasta is that Crocodile lives there. We have ways of being able to threaten him into getting a message to Hancock. Plus, we need some important supplies from there. Like what? Proper clothes for warm climates. We have plenty of clothes for cold climates thanks to Germa, but it's been hell whenever we sail through a warm climate. Alvia spoke up. She was standing opposite Tom looking for a celestial dragon ship. Besides, we can pick up some more supplies that we could need. Garp said that Bogart should get a second sword before we head to the New World, since once we imbue his sword with a devil fruit, hockey users could become a problem. Things like that we can get at Alabasta for a good price. Bogart was currently the acting helmsman while Kuma was in the communications room listening for any chatter about a celestial dragon being spotted. Kazan had decided that this was when he would have Alvia take his shift and was currently sleeping. Fine then. Could I get one of their books on their famous sandriding boats? I'd been meaning to get one before my imprisonment. Tom's thoughts were of continuing to improve the granting wish. This ship was more than just him paying Garp back for his and Alvia's freedom. It had become his home and his second masterpiece. His first masterpiece would always be his 2 apprentices. If he could continue to improve it, then he would take every chance he could take. Sure. We're getting all sorts of things there. What's one more thing added to the list? Garp chuckled. He wanted to tell his crew about the book and the gods he had talked to, but he didn't know how. How do you tell people you had talked to the embodiment of a future wish your grandson makes, death herself, and the very earth they walk on? He'd sound crazier than he usually does. Who knows, maybe we'll finally get a helmsman for this ship. Seriously, how is it that I'm the only one who has any proper experience steering a ship? Alvia still was somewhat baffled by that. Tom, she understood, he was a fisherman so he could just swim, and he was also the shipwright so his job would be to repair the ship. She just wished he would get to labeling all of the buttons. But the others? Garp was a vice admiral in the Marines with Bogart as his right hand. One of them should have known how to steer a ship. Then Kazan, who apparently went from island to island while he was an admiral on a bicycle. Who does that? Kumashi got the feeling he couldn't do to his sheer size. My job on the ship was to defend it. Tsuru or Seni usually steered it. Garp smiled at the memories. Everyone, Kuma's voice came over the ship's speakers, a celestial dragon has been spotted 30 clicks north of us. They could feel as Bogart changed the ship's course. The communications room was already proving effective. Look alive, things could get hairy. We don't know what kind of Marines are guarding this one or what devil fruit users. Tom, Alvia, defend the ship. I'll handle the Saint. Garp stood up as Bogart activated some of the accelerators. While Tom had started to label the buttons, he wasn't doing it fast enough in Alvia's opinion. Within minutes they covered the distance. The ship was in sight and it hadn't noticed them yet. A couple of harpoon guns came out of the prow and shot at the ship, connecting the two. They began to pull it in, and that's when they heard the screams. Someone was in pain. Garp jumped onto the ship once he could and froze at the sight. A blonde woman, a Marine, was on the ground, one of her arms cut off. The captain was right beside her with his sword dripping with blood. The picture was clear. Batting the captain aside, he picked up the girl and threw her onto the Granting Wishes deck. Get her to the med bay now. Disconnect the ships. Garp quickly fought against the Marines as the ship rocked when the harpoons disconnected. He could feel it start to sink, most likely a hole being torn out or cracks appearing. The Marines on the ship either weren't well trained or had yet to see any proper action. Their equipment wasn't well taken care of and their coordination was poor. Garp soon was surrounded by the unconscious bodies of them all and walked towards the Saint. He didn't let her say anything and punched through her dome helmet. He gripped her head and ripped it off. Throwing it into the sea, he was about to jump back onto his ship when he noticed something. Where the girl had been was a very familiar sniper rifle. It was an experimental sniper rifle, meant for those with increased strength who could handle the recoil. It was named the Halkonen and had the firepower to pierce through a ship's hull. Garp picked it up and then jumped onto the Granting Wish. We're leaving. He made his way straight for the med bay, wanting to see how the girl was doing and to confirm his suspicions. As he got closer, he could faintly hear the end of a conversation. If she has a Logia fruit, couldn't she just regrow her arm like you can? It doesn't work like. First of all, not all Logias can do that. Second, it takes a lot of training to be able to regrow limbs. Took me a whole year to get to the skill I'm at with that. Kazan was there. They most likely got him to try and stem the bleeding with some ice. So who is she? Garp stepped into the room. Her name is Sarah's Victoria. She is a Marine sniper. Her devil fruit is the Shadow Fruit Model Red, making her a Red Shadow Woman. Garp looked at her pale face. I trained her. Sarah's awoke with a start. Looking around, she could tell she was in a med bay, just not one she'd ever seen. Groaning, she tried to sit up only to nearly fall over. Looking to her right, she saw that where her arm was supposed to be was a stump. Not even her shoulder was there. Then it all came back. You interest me. You are now my property. The Saint she had been put on guard duty for. She had decided that she was her property. Sarah's had of course refused. You dare to refuse a god? Captain cut off her arm. The captain she had served under for 4 years hadn't even hesitated. She had screamed and then fell unconscious. Now she's somewhere she hasn't been before. The door to the med bay opened and she panicked. A woman with white hair stepped in. Oh, you're awake. As she stepped towards Sarah, she could see that her gun was near the doorway. How are you feeling? Any pain? Sarah's decked the woman and bolted to the door. Grabbing the gun as she ran out, she tried to get to the deck, but she didn't know this ship. As she ran, she felt the phantom pain of the gunshot wound from when she had been shot as a child. Her parents murdered before her eyes, and she couldn't do anything even when she tried. Left in the orphanage for years, she had decided to enlist in the Marines, just like her father. Her time at the academy had been some of the best years of her life, training under Monkey D. Garp. He had become something like a father to her. She ran into the mess hall only to see a bear of a man in the kitchen preparing something. "Oh, hello. Would you like something to eat?" Sarah's was hyperventilating. She needed to get out of here to escape from the celestial dragon. She ran out of the mess hall and kept running. She could hear cannon fire. The ship was either passing by or was in a battle. "Wait. We're not going to hurt you." She could hear the woman yell. That had been what her captain said to all the recruits when they joined. And he cut off her arm without a second thought. Why did he do that? She had served the Marines faithfully, followed their orders, and captured or executed criminals. She did everything right, so why did he hurt her? Why did he listen to the celestial dragon? What? Sarah's head became clouded with these questions and her eyes began to tear up. As her vision blurred, she didn't see someone in her way and ran into them. "Sarah's?" The voice was familiar. Strong hands grabbed her and she tried to struggle, but it felt right. Like she had been held like this before. "What are you doing out of bed? You need to rest. Losing an arm is bad enough, but I'm sure the trauma as well is enough reason to stay there." Looking up as rough, calloused fingers wiped away her tears, she was met with the face of the man who trained her. "Vice Admiral Garp?" He chuckled. "I thought you kept up with the news? I'm not part of the Marines anymore." He smiled at her and the familiar feeling of happiness whenever she saw it returned to her. "What? Where am I?" "You're on my ship. We had been hunting down a celestial dragon to kill when we found the one whose ship you were on. I had my crew take you to the med bay." Sarah's realized she had punched a member of Garp's crew. "There you are." She could hear the woman approaching. "Alvia, what happened to you?" "It's nothing, Garp, she just punched me out of fear. She did wake up in a strange place after whatever happened on her ship. I don't blame her." "Sorry." Sarah's turned her head to look at Alvia. Alvia waved it off. "Don't be, I'd do the same thing if I were in your shoes." "Come on, Sarah's, let's get you back to the med bay." Garp picked her up. Sarah's let out a squeak. Sir, I can walk." This reminded her of the many recruits who trained themselves to the point of collapse. Garp never got angry with them, he just became concerned. "The adrenaline will burn off soon and you haven't eaten anything for a full day at least." So she had been knocked out for that long. "Kuzan and Bogart are finishing up with the pirates that attacked, so don't worry about what's going on outside." He was right, the adrenaline was burning off. "Sir, why did you leave the Marines?" It had been burning her up inside. She looked up to Garp, he was her mentor. When she heard that he quit and everything that he did, it scared her. What could have pushed him to leave the Marines? Short answer, I couldn't ignore the many problems with the Marines and the crimes the celestial dragons constantly get away with. She flinched at the mention of celestial dragons. Long answer, I have 2 grandsons who because of their parentage would be killed just because of the blood that they share. 10 months before my more official resignation, I was forced to confront the truth that I couldn't keep them safe while working for the Marines. That explained a lot. Garp was always serious about family, he'd even hunted down several pirates who had killed the families of the recruits he trained. She remembered the day when she learned that the people who murdered her parents had been arrested by him. She had cried such tears of joy. That makes sense. She could feel herself growing tired. "The saint I was tasked with protecting." She yawned. "She wanted me as her property. I said no and—" She didn't finish as she fell asleep in Garp's arms. "I got the rest of the story, kid. Just rest up." Garp laid her down on the cot in the med bay and sighed. It wasn't common, but celestial dragons could take Marines as slaves. Sarah's had been gifted with a very well-developed figure. Throw in the fact that she is a devil fruit user and a celestial dragon would immediately claim her as a slave. "The saint and captain are dead, they can't hurt you anymore." He rubbed her forehead. "Alvia, stay with her. I'll be back later to check on her." Alvia nodded. Guion sighed. Tsuru had asked her to come to Alabasta with her to inspect Crocodile's casino. Although once they got on the ship she admitted it was actually going to be a vacation. Tsuru was tired of all the paperwork and having to constantly deal with the warlords and all the constant problems they create. Apparently, the 5 elders were still hounding her to find a 7th warlord despite her refusal to do so. "We should be arriving soon. What do you want to do first?" Tsuru let out a deep breath and her shoulders sagged. Just for the day she was going to forget all of her duties and relax. She needed it now or else she was going to go crazy. Anything that won't cause me stress. Despite what some will say about Alabasta, I quite enjoy the heat of its day. The people are incredibly kind, and the king is one of the few nobles who isn't a piece of shit. Tsuru looked at the young woman she considered her little sister. Gion had recently become a vice admiral and was one of the potential candidates for the position of admiral. A recent breakthrough Sengoku had with changing the Marines, the position of admiral is no longer limited to just 3. He'd been trying to change that for years. It had taken the crisis they were still trying to catch up with to change it. It made the victory incredibly bittersweet. Have you ever been? Once. The week you had to hand me off to Garp, he had taken a small group of recruits to Alabasta for hot climate combat training. Garp had been trying to teach them how to not burn themselves out while the heat of the climate pummeled them. He let us stay an extra day to shop in the market. It's where I got Kenpyra. Gion rested her hand on her trusted Mito sword. I remember that despite the heat, I had never felt more relaxed. The people there, they give the kingdom a feeling of comfort. It's a wonderful place. Gion smiled at the memory. What do you think of the current state the Marines are in? Tsuru saw Gion's hesitation to answer. I'm not going to report you. Gion still hesitated to answer. I don't know how to feel about it. I've been forced to see the many flaws within it, especially after the Sabaody incident. The only reason my ships couldn't join was because we were in the middle of handling a pirate fleet. The Sabaody incident had been a nightmare, just like Sengoku predicted. Multiple Marine ships abandoned their posts only to then be destroyed or crippled. Many of those posts were then taken over by pirates. The kingdoms were in an uproar, especially after Big News Morgans got the information that the Marines were avenging slavers. When I learned that there was still an auction house that was legally recognized and defended by the Marines, I was disgusted. So was I when I first learned about it. Sengoku, Garp, and I had been trying to get that place shut down for years, to finally end the era of legal slavery. Tsuru sighed. The fact that it took Garp leaving the Marines and then attacking the place for that to finally happen appalls me. Sengoku and we decided to use it to our advantage. We leaked the information to Morgans. Gion jerked. Fat load of good that did us. The world nobles only learned that they no longer liked Sabaody. We had to talk them down from just eradicating it with a buster call. I'm starting to fully see what Garp saw that got him to quit. I'm thinking about doing it myself, just retiring to somewhere nice and hot. You really want to retire? Gion had never heard Tsuru talk about retirement. Not even as a joke. Gion, I'd recommend you find a new place to call home. The Marines, you're gonna see so many more horrible things. I tried to shield you from it because I believed that Sengoku, Garp, and I could change it. That we could make things better. Most of our efforts were ultimately fruitless. It took a crisis of this magnitude for things to start to change, and even then they are ultimately small in the grand scheme of things. Tsuru looked at Gion with sad eyes. This wasn't a vacation either, was it? Tsuru shook her head. No, I brought you here to try and get you to leave this organization before you die because of them. Or worse, one of the celestial dragons decides to take you as a slave. With the auction house gone, they've just been visiting whatever island they want and trying to take as many slaves as they please. We've had to talk them down from that multiple times, some of them were even killed. I don't want you to face such a fate. Tsuru shuddered. When she was young and first learned the celestial dragons could even take Marines as slaves, she had lived in fear that she would be taken as one. Sengoku and Garp had told her they wouldn't let that happen, but she was still afraid of such a thing even in her old age. She wouldn't be able to live with herself if Gion was enslaved by them. Why couldn't you talk to me about this at Marine Ford? Because at Alabasta you could just fade away into the crowds never to be seen again. Since Crocodile resides there, Marines don't step into it unless they have a reason for it, such as doing a routine inspection. I've been known to take you with me at times, so none of it is suspicious. Gion was shocked. The woman who had taught her everything that she knew, the reason she was able to become a vice admiral and a candidate for the admiral position, was now telling her to desert the Marines. Is it truly that bad? When Garp had left, if he had asked us, Sengoku and I would have joined him without hesitation. We've been trying to create changes to the Marines for decades, but the world nobles stopped us. Not even Sengoku as fleet admiral has been able to change much, if anything at all. The position is just a glorified secretary to the world nobles. Tsuru sighed. She had thought about this much. Whatever got Garp to stop being so optimistic about changing the Marines had to have been something huge. He was the only reason we stayed, because he kept seeing the good in things. Now we're just looking for a good time to retire. After the Sabaody incident, we've decided to try and screw the world government over as much as we can before that. What I'm trying to do now, I do it to keep you safe after I've left. Gion looked at the approaching shore of Alabasta. What if I joined Garp? He seems to be trying to change things. I could continue your mission for you. She looked at Tsuru, who stared at her in shock. You've been a big sister to me. I owe you so much. It's the least I could do to repay you. Tsuru chuckled. All right, I'll help you find him. I'm sure he would welcome you. He welcomed Kazan after all. Tsuru remembered what Garp had been like after O'Hara. Saul had been his friend. The people of O'Hara had just wanted to learn. Yet the world government had Spandine execute them with a buster call. Garp had set up a small monument to them on the island. It was the only thing he could do at the time. He buried every body he could find. Saul's body had been completely destroyed. Yet Garp hadn't been mad at Kazan. Disappointed, sure, but not mad. Saul had been Kazan's friend too, and the man had been desolate for days on end. Garp was the one who helped him out of his rut. Garp had punched Akainu though. As they docked and got off the ship, Tsuru breathed in Alabastus air. She hadn't been able to relax since Garp disappeared a little over 2 years ago now. While her goal in coming here had been to convince Guion to leave, she had underestimated how much she was trusted by the woman. Walking into the market, she saw all sorts of people. The main docking town of Alabasta was a massive trade area and granted the kingdom much of the money it made. It was currently the only kingdom whose trade routes were completely defended, thanks in no small part to Crocodile giving some of his own money to its defense. The kingdom had even commissioned Water 7 for some ships. King Cobra had been leading his people through the crisis they were experiencing, trying to keep them alive. There were rumors that he was considering leaving the world government, which increased after the Sabaody incident. King Cobra was one of the few nobles who were actually good people, the Nefertari family refusing to ascend to marry Geos. He'd always had Garp's respect, even if the two had never met in an official capacity. Let's look for some new clothes. They walked among the market stalls. Once it's time for you to escape, you'll need to ditch your normal attire. Tsuru had made several plans to get out of the Marines should she risk enslavement. Ditching what you normally wore as a Marine was step one in all of them. What would you recommend? Guion looked at Tsuru, ready to learn from her once again. Something the complete opposite of your normal style. So, something that covers up your body? Guion was very confident in her body. She even used it in battle to throw her opponents off, a strategy made all the more effective by her choice of clothing. Since she was known to wear that kind of outfit, she couldn't wear them for a while. Perhaps a cover for your sword as well. Why are you giving me a knife? A voice drew Tsuru's attention. A woman in a poncho with goggles over her eyes and a mask covering the lower half of her face stood next to a large man holding a knife out to her. The man was in similar attire. Hiding behind him was another woman, although she wasn't wearing a poncho. What drew Tsuru's attention about her was that her right arm was gone. You like to have your hair long, an enemy could grab it. You'll need something to cut it quickly. That voice sounded familiar. The advice was sound. Tsuru told it to any recruit she trained who decided to have long hair. She'd even carried a knife when she had long hair. Fine. Honestly, you sound paranoid sometimes. The woman took the knife. Captain has seen many things and lived through countless battles. Most likely he has seen people with long hair get injured or killed because of it. The one-armed woman spoke up. So the man was their captain. Were they pirates then? If so, they must be smart to not be loudly declaring it for the world to see. But why did the man's voice sound familiar? Guion looked at the blonde woman. I didn't disagree with what he said, I just said he sounds paranoid sometimes. The covered woman waved her hand and started moving to the next stall. The man pulled a large cart behind him and the one-armed woman pulled a smaller one behind her. We have most of the supplies. Once we get them back to the ship we can go find Crocodile. So these people wanted to find Crocodile. Saris? Guion called out and the trio froze. The blonde woman looked over and Tsuru realized that she was currently wearing a modified marine uniform stained red. The man stared at Tsuru before sighing. Can we not fight, please? I'd rather not make a scene here. Tsuru squinted at him before she finally registered the man's voice. She chuckled. Garp, I was going to track you down. You saved me the trouble. The trio tensed up. I know a place we can talk. I need a favor. It's all right, you two. Tsuru is a friend of mine. Garp reassured his crewmates, although they didn't calm down. They walked into a restaurant and Tsuru and Garp claimed a booth while their companions went for a table. Why are you here in Alabasta, Garp? Garp sighed as he brought down his half-mask and put the goggles on his forehead. Getting supplies before starting a plan. Why were you going to track me down? You remember Guion, right? Garp nodded. While I only had her for a week, she was a very determined student. She took to the lesson like a fish to water. I convinced her to leave the Marines. However, she decided to join up with you to continue our mission of changing the Marines. Tsuru accepted the glass of water and took a sip. What do you want? I'll give you anything so she can join your crew. I don't need anything like that. You actually made this easier for me. I need you to get a letter to Boa Hancock. Tsuru arched an eyebrow. Why her? We're planning on making her a new emperor. Tsuru chuckled and Garp smirked. They both knew what this would mean for the world government. If you can get it to her, then consider us even. Guion can join our crew. You didn't even need to owe me. You and I both know that I would. She's the closest thing to a little sister that I got. I won't let her stay in this rotten organization any longer. Garp chuckled. Yeah, I know. Sarah's and Guion actually became friends during that week I had her. That's how she recognized her. Tsuru looked at Sarah's. What happened to her? A saint tried to make her their slave. She refused and the captain followed the order of cutting her arm off. Kuzan is currently helping her make a prosthetic limb with her fruit. She has a logia? And you didn't train her to regrow her limbs? That was a surprise. She got it a few months before graduation. The shadow fruit model read. That sounded like Gecko Moria's fruit. Except that one was a paramecia. Devil fruits were weird. She decided to join us after she recovered enough to walk on her own. And we're always willing to accept others among us. Garp handed her the letter. I'm guessing you were gonna threaten Crocodile into giving this to her. Garp nodded. I'm holding a warlord meeting in 7 days. I'll give it to her then. Thanks. What's the plan with Kajaku? I'm working on it. Once she is out, I'm retiring, Tsuru told Garp. Now that Guion's safety was assured, she had to get to work helping her granddaughter. They finished their drinks and got out of the booth. They hugged each other real quick. If you're planning to retire soon, I know a good village in the East Blue that would be perfect. Tsuru chuckled, already knowing what he was gonna say. She had been to Fusha village a few times in the past. The weather was always perfect. It would be a nice place to retire to. I'll consider it. She walked up to Guion, who stood up. She pulled her little sister into a hug and stayed like that for a moment. I know you will make something amazing. Just promise me you'll live long enough to see the fruits of your efforts. Guion gripped Tsuru's coat and teared up. I promise, big sister. Sengoku sighed as he walked through the empty halls of Marineford. Nearly everyone was either away on some assignment or currently sleeping. He couldn't. Tsuru and he had made the decision to begin undermining the Marines before they retire, to finally force some changes. The few changes he's managed to make have only happened because of the crisis. Yet they were small in the face of what he actually wanted to handle. Abolishing the Buster Call Protocol, giving the Celestial Dragons some laws that they have to follow, making slavery completely illegal with no exceptions. He hasn't been able to make any headway with that. He stopped at the training field and looked out at it. Flashback. Sengoku looked at Garp in the light of the moon as he did push-ups. He was currently closing in on his 1,000th. You're gonna end up killing yourself if you keep going like that. I'm fine, Senny. Sweat dripped off of Garp as he finished his warm-up. He stepped up to a punching bag and wrapped his hands in bandages. I can keep going. Sengoku sighed. His friend was more stubborn than a goat. Get some sleep. I'll sleep when I'm done. Finishing up his quick spar with the punching bag, Garp started to kick it. I need to get better. I need to be better. He had changed after getting a letter. He had thrown himself into his training even more than he usually did. Before the letter, he set aside at least an hour of rest. Now they were lucky to get him to sleep a minute, let alone an hour. Garp, talk to me. What happened? Nothing you need to worry about. Except I do. You're running yourself rabbit. You need to rest. I said I'm fine. With a final kick, Garp sent the punching bag flying. It landed in a heap of sand and he breathed heavily. Garp? What happened? Sengoku stepped forward only to realize his friend had fallen asleep standing up. Shaking his head, he picked up the man and carried him to his cot. You can't keep doing this. Second flashback. You can't keep doing this. Sengoku stared as Garp scolded a recruit in the light of the moon. You're running yourself rabbit. You need to rest. I'm fine. I need to get better, be better. The recruit got off the ground and moved to go to the punching bag, but Garp stopped them. You can't do that if you keep pushing your body like this. What happened? Garp looked at the recruit with concern. The recruit didn't want to say anything, but Garp's concerned look wore him down. My home island was attacked by pirates and the Marines did nothing. My mom lost her arm in the attack. The recruit broke down into tears and Garp pulled him into a hug. All right. Look, you won't be able to do anything if you run yourself into an early grave. Get some sleep and I'll help you figure out a new training schedule. Garp however realized that the recruit had fallen asleep. Sighing, he picked him up and moved to take him back to bed. He stopped to look at Sengoku for a moment. "I need to go handle some business for a couple days, could you take over?" Sengoku knew what he was gonna go do. "Present." Sengoku sighed loudly. "You could be such a hypocrite at times, Garp." As Tsuru closed in on Marineford, she sighed once again. She had already concocted a story about Gion's disappearance, and the crew of the ship had agreed to collaborate on it. They had gone into Alabasta while Tsuru went to check on Crocodile, which she did. Gion had disappeared into the crowd and they found her marine jacket in a trash bin. They had actually put the jacket through a trash bin so it matched the story. What Tsuru sighed about was what was undoubtedly going to be an increase in paperwork. Since most Marines were either in constant battle or dealing with internal matters, and since Gion had been under her command, Tsuru would get Gion's paperwork. But she had one less thing tying her to the Marines now. She was one step closer to retiring with a less heavy heart. Some cannon fire tore her from her thoughts. Looking to the side, she saw some pirates who had been foolish enough to try and attack Marine headquarters. They were a decent-sized fleet, but the defenses of Marineford had been bolstered to an extreme. It had actually become a common occurrence for pirates to try and attack the HQ at least once a month, although none of them had been allied with any of the emperors, thankfully. Tsuru smirked slightly. The crisis had actually caused Whitebeard, Red-Haired Shanks, and Big Mom's fleets to grow bigger. It had sent the five elders into a panic when they learned about it. Watching as the final ship sank, Tsuru was reminded of her first ever battle. Flashback. "Garp, what the fuck kind of drugs are you on?" Tsuru stared at her friend who had somehow steered them into the middle of a pirate battle. The two ships had stopped fighting upon seeing the marine ship. "Look, I know how to navigate on land, okay? Garp scratched the back of his head sheepishly. "You can't navigate a ship?" Tsuru could feel a vein popping. "Senni's teaching me." Garp scratched his cheek as he looked away from her piercing glare. "He says my sea navigation is set to the nearest fight. Given the fact I had to steer us away from 3 different Sea King fights, I'm willing to agree with him. That had been a headache and a half. How he managed to get them there she didn't know. For that matter, she was going to strangle their superior officer for putting Garp on navigation duty for the ship and then only have her on the ship as well. The reason had been some bullshit about learning to work in pairs, and she honestly didn't care. She has had too many near-death experiences because of Garp's navigation skills at sea. "So what should we do about the pirates?" Garp pointed at the 2 ships who thankfully hadn't fired at them while they were arguing. "Take 2 cannonballs and throw it at them," Tsuru said sarcastically. Then she realized who she just said that to. "No, wait." But it was too late. Garp had already picked up 2 cannonballs from a box for one of the on-deck cannons and threw them at the ships. They pierced the hulls and sent them sinking down to the depths of the sea. "Hey, this is way easier than loading up a cannon." "Great idea, Tsuru." Garp smiled at her, and she once again had to wonder what kind of drugs he had to be on to be this stupid, and if she could have some of them. "Present." Tsuru shook her head and chuckled. While at the time it had been very stressful, she now looked back on it and laughed. Especially because it started Garp on just throwing cannonballs at ships instead of using a cannon. Thankfully Sengoku's navigation lessons took root in him, but he did wind up getting the 3 into too many fights for her liking. "Honestly, Garp, how did you manage to get us into the new world when you were trying to sail to Reverse Mountain?" She laughed as they docked in Marineford. Kazan and Sarah sat across from each other in the mess hall. They had set out from Alabasta yesterday, staying an extra day to get Gion some clothes and things to put in her room. They were heading for the meeting point they had put in the letter. "You almost got this. Try again." Kazan spoke softly to Saras. This was the first time he taught someone ever. Akainu and Kizaru rarely if ever taught anyone, but Kazan was usually away from the base, biking along the sea and looking for anyone he could help. While most people thought he was shirking his duties, but he was following what Garp taught him. You can't wait around to help people. Saras grit her teeth and red tendrils of shadow came out of where her right arm had been. They tried to coalesce into a more definitive shape, but Sarah's gasped out and they dissipated. She slammed her hand on the table. Damn it. Kazan had been trying to teach her how to make an arm out of her shadows. The problem with her injury was that since she got it out of surprise, she wasn't able to turn her body to shadows in time. So she couldn't simply regrow it, she had to create a prosthetic for herself out of her devil fruit. Kazan sighed. They had been at this for hours, but it wasn't easy. He knew how to grow his limbs back when injured, but he had yet to learn how to make prosthetic limbs out of his ice. If Garp hadn't left the Marines, he might have actually asked him to train him how to. "Alright, let's take a break and try again after." He got up to go get a drink, but Sarah stayed seated. Sarah's was frustrated, to say the least. She had gotten her devil fruit a few months before graduation. She had as good a handle on it as she did because Garp started a bunch of cram lessons for her before then and gave her some training regiments she could do with her powers when she had free time. He had told her that once it was time to move on to the regeneration part of Logia devil fruits to come to him. How do you do it? She looked at Kazan. How do you regrow your body? Kazan looked at her for a second from the kitchen. I had a good teacher just like you. Flashback. Kazan looked at the door to Garp's office with some nervousness. He'd never stepped foot in there before, but he wanted this conversation to be private. With a deep breath, he knocked on the door. Come in. Garp called out. Kazan stepped in and once the door was closed immediately saluted Garp. Garp was behind his desk working on some paperwork. Kazan? Is something wrong? Kazan jumped slightly. No sir. What do you need? Garp put down his pen and gave Kazan his full attention. Kazan trembled slightly under Garp's gaze. This was the hero of the Marines, the rival of Gold Roger. I would like to learn how to regenerate my body with my devil fruit, sir. Garp stared at him for a second and Kazan feared he had said something wrong. Not yet. Kazan moved to object but Garp held up his hand and he stepped down. First, you will learn how the human body works, how everything moves, and how the organs help the body function. Then once that is over, you will only train for this under the direct supervision of both me and a medical officer. You're lucky we're not close to graduation. I can more easily just slap an extra year of training on. Kazan's shoulders slumped, relieved that he hadn't messed up. You will also study everything you can about your devil fruit. You need to understand how both your devil fruit and body work to be able to truly master this. Garp looked at Kazan seriously, knowing this was going to be a difficult year of training. Second flashback. Kazan stood before Garp and a medical officer. The medical officer was usually switched out with a new one each time they trained, so he hadn't been able to get to know any of them. With a deep breath, he took up the sword and cut off his forearm. Garp looked at him and the medical officer was ready to jump in, but Kazan focused on where his forearm was supposed to be and ice grew from it. Soon his entire left forearm was just ice and then it turned back to flesh. Congratulations, Kazan, you've managed to master the regeneration ability of your devil fruit. Garp nodded at him, proud. Thank you, sir. Kazan saluted him. The medical officer nodded and left, no longer needed. Now we start your training on observation hockey, Garp smirked. Hockey? What's that? Kazan had never heard of that before. You'll see. This will ensure you won't be taken by surprise and permanently lose a limb. That was the start of Garp's hockey training for Kazan. He would call those the months of hell. Present. But those months had paid off. Now the only way he could permanently lose a limb was if someone used heat. I think I got an idea that might help. Sarah's looked at him as he gave her a glass of water and he walked off. What is it? Something Garp used to help me learn how to regenerate my body. Kazan walked to the med bay. There were some books he needed to grab. And that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Support the writer. Don't forget to like, sub, share and donate for more videos.